Hey guys, welcome to the second video in this series, the easiest way to get rich. Now in step one we talked about dividends, and now we're going to talk about finding the highest quality dividend stocks. So I'm going to look at some of the criteria that I use personally when I'm looking at the quality of a dividend. Now this has nothing to do with the stock, this has nothing to do with the balance sheet, with the different kind of company it is, with the sector, the industry, etc., etc. This is just concerning the dividend quality. So I've done videos on these things, and you can check them out in the definitions series. And it's going to be very important to understand these things in order to fully appreciate this video. So we're going to look at the first criteria, which is yield. We're going to look at payout ratio, 10-year growth rate, and 5/10 ratio. So the yield in my book should be at least over 4%. If it's too low, I mean, it's not going to go anywhere. You've probably heard this somewhere, start low and go slow. Well, I say get somewhere, because if it's too low, it's not going to get anywhere, even if you have a high 10-year dividend growth rate. So yeah, at least 4% in my book. I like to get at a lot more than 4%, but 4% is the bare minimum. If it's too high, could be too good to be true, guys. Just be careful about it. Doesn't mean that it is going to be too good to be true, but just be careful. It could mean the price talk has been down and the yield has increased as a consequence from that. The second thing we're going to look at is the payout ratio. So how much cash does the company have to pay the dividend, and how is it able to keep paying that dividend in the future? So I like to see it under 70%. Now, depending on what kind of stock it is, it could be higher and it could be acceptable, but usually under 70% is what I use as a threshold. So is there such a thing as a too low payout ratio? Not really. It just means that it's going to be sustainable and the company has room to grow the dividend. Is there such a thing as a too high payout ratio? Well, that's another thing. Yeah, there clearly is. It can be over 100%, guys. Some companies really don't have enough money to cover their own dividends. That could mean there's an incoming dividend cut, or even that the company will take out debt, will take a loan in order to be able to pay you guys. I know that's crazy, but some companies do that. So the third thing here is the 10-year growth rate. What I like to see is usually a strict minimum of 6 and optimally at least 8 also, okay, depending on the initial yield. If the initial yield is high enough, I'll accept maybe a 6, and if the initial yield is a little bit lower, I'll want the growth rate to be higher. So again, if it's too low, that dividend is not going to increase fast enough. It has to keep up with inflation, like we said, and ultimately that dividend income will be going nowhere. And what about if it's too high? Well, you just want to be careful with that, guys. Again, it's not a problem in itself, but it could mean that the company will have problems later on. Its income has to increase by at least as much as they're increasing their dividends. So you just want to be careful with that and keep monitoring that company's income. Now, the last thing we look at is the 5/10 ratio. Now, the 5/10 ratio should be at least over 1. If it's equal to 1, that's not a problem. It just means the momentum is stable and that the company's increasing its dividend by as much as it used to increase it, 10 years ago and 5 years ago and whatnot. So if it's too low, if it's under 1, it means that the momentum is decreasing. So the increase in dividend is slowly diminishing over time. So they used to increase their dividend a lot more, and now they're increasing it, but a little less. So it's just another thing to watch. And if it's too high, well, I don't think there's such a thing as a too high 5/10 ratio. Seriously, it just means they're increasing it a lot more in the recent years than they used to in the past. So one last thing here, guys. I want to give you guys some homework, if you will. I'm going to list 5 stocks here. Now, these are real stocks, and I've taken their latest stats in terms of yield, in terms of payout ratio, in terms of 10-year dividend growth rate, and in terms of the 5/10 ratio. Now, I want you guys to look at these stocks and rate them from 1 to 5, going from how likely would it be for you guys to invest in them. Okay, so for example, you would say B would be 1, C would be 2, etc., etc. But the most important thing is, I want you to give me the stock you would most invest in and I want you to give me a reason why you wouldn't invest in the others. Let's say this is all the information you had and you had to choose one. All right, so leave a comment below with that information, and you can find my ratings and my justifications in the bottom of the description. All right, so check it out there, and my ratings, my answers will be there. So if you like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, leave a comment with your answers and what you think of those stocks, and don't forget to subscribe so you guys don't miss any future videos.